I think this is really also a neuroscience hack. If something goes wrong, if you fail in a sense or something doesn't go as expected, it's important.
This theory I just remembered with a glass, and you need to fit like some big stones, like some smaller stones and like some sand in it. And if you put the sand first and then the stones, it won't fit. But if you put the big stones first and then add up the small things, they will start to fit in between. And I think every day is like 2 or 3 bigger things I know, okay, those need to be done.
Failure for the brain can be, in a way, it's unpleasant, but can be beneficial because it just helps the brain to learn. And we naturally have this in us that we want to make things better the next time.
For me, goal setting is not a way to achieve things, but it is a way for me to make my head clean.
Ooh. Okay, so for me this is really striking, but wait, can you wait, okay, explain this like. Hi everyone and welcome to the Neurolympics podcast, brought to you by Brains First, the company that helps you make better talent decisions powered by neuroscience. I'm Lucy, I'm the host of the Neurolympics podcast, and I have a background in psychology and applied neuroscience. And actually on the Neurolympics podcast, we love to take these brain insights and apply them in order to help you equip you with insights and ideas and structures and strategies to improve your well-being, your performance, and your productivity in the workplace and in professional sports. The last 3 months, we spoke about attention and thinking and decision-making, and this month is all about planning. So actually, after we have made decisions, how do we actually turn them into actionable steps and set achievable goals? And on today's episode, we have Ivar and Kira, our 2 customer success managers from Brains First, join us. And they will dive into how they're helping our clients or you guys to navigate your needs, set achievable goals, and navigate towards the future. We'll also touch upon the 2 fundamentally different styles of planning that our brains can exhibit, so how we can have a more organizational and a more improvised planning style, and how that influences us in the workplace. Last but not least, of course, they will tell us a little bit about their goal setting and planning in their personal lives. So let's get right into it. Ivar and Kira, thank you so much for joining us today. Really, really exciting.
Nice.
Thank you.
Before we go right into the episode, let's start with a little warm-up phase to get the brain cells going and to ease you into the episode. So I have 2 bit more personal questions. And the first one is, what is a plan or a goal that you recently set and that you are really proud of?
I should take first. Okay.
Take it away.
Yeah. So I did actually a couple of things, but the 2 things I want to highlight out is one, I planned a holiday with my mom to Ibiza, which was quite interesting and also hard sometimes of their planning styles. And another thing, what I did was quitting smoking, and it was already planned far ahead. And in the end, it works out still. So so far so good.
Oh my gosh, good one. Yeah. Nice.
Hard one as well.
What about you, Kira?
I had some friends I wanted to see more. And with one of them, I planned like a little, almost like you do with your colleagues, bi-weekly meeting. So we have a little tradition now, so we don't have to think every time of a new date when we can see each other. Now it's just set in the calendar, and we see each other every 2 weeks.
That's really sweet. I like that. And then another question. If you had 1 more hour per day, how would you plan to use it?
I think on a daily routine, I never have enough time. So 1 hour a day would be really welcoming.
We can confirm.
Well, who has?
I think everyone, but I would or take more time for myself. And if that counts as sleeping as well, I would sleep more. Because I think on average, I just don't make the 7 hours a day.
You should even make 8 hours a day, no?
Yeah, but the older you get, the less you need it. So I think if time flies fast, I will make it anyway.
Okay.
I would take it for reading, I think. Because usually I only get to read on holidays when I'm really free. And just with daily life, I never get to it. and it would be nice to read more. Every time I do it, I'm like, oh, this is such a good feeling. I should do this more often. So
I get that. Nice, guys. Well, let's get right into the episode. And I think we should really start off with your roles as customer success managers at Brains First. Because I think really what you are doing on a daily basis has a lot to do with, well, paving out these plans and setting goals with our clients at Brains First. So take us in, like, what are you doing in your roles, and how does it relate to planning and goal setting?
Well, if someone becomes a client at Brains First, we basically take them in. We set up a plan with them, what they need to start off, what input they need, from which people they need it, which meetings they need to plan for, and everything else they need to have a kickoff. And so there's definitely a certain structure to it, I would say. Mm-hmm. That's always the same, but of course everyone has different schedules, so, and also needs. So from client to client, it also differs. How the process looks like. So there's always like a bit of flexibility around it.
Yeah, you try to kind of create a structure in which they have an overview of what they can expect and what they are coming up to, and that they have to think about a couple of things, because you cannot say, okay, now let's start and see wherever we end, because you're paying a well amount of money to reach a goal. And sometimes a company goal is very different from a team goal. So then they have to set back one step and to see, like, okay, what are we actually trying to achieve? And then we can also say, yeah, it's good that you want to achieve this, but this will not be in like 2 months or 5 months or in a year, but this is something we can achieve over the years together. So also you have to manage that expectations. And the more clear you are on these topics, you understand each other better, you manage expectations, and also you're not like surprised, because a lot of things where people like get tension from or stress is by surprise. So if we kind of pave the way as structured as possible, they have their own opinion, they can decide what they're willing to do and what not. We can also assist on that as well. Yeah. And it's a little bit in the name, like customer success is about, they need success, or they, when they achieve success, they stay customer, we're happy, we can do more fun things together. Yeah. And then everyone in the end, has a win-win-win situation.
Yeah. And I love what you're saying, because I think this is also like really a neuroscience fact that our brains really love to predict and to anticipate. And so I think in your role, really helping the client to take away all these stressors and to pave out like a clear plan towards achieving goals will really motivate, and will be really motivating and rewarding, and take away all these, unpredictable factors. So I think this is really, really nice. And maybe you can take us even a little bit more specifically into maybe again the services we provide with Brains First, and also the product we have, and then maybe give 1 or 2 examples with what you're working on with our clients.
Yeah, so we basically have the Neurolympics, you know that, if you listen to this podcast, the 4 games, which is an assessment of your cognitive functions. And I would say most of our clients use the assessment to as a recruitment tool to see, okay, if we have 100 applicants, who is cognitively most suited for the role. Yeah. So a client, when they come to us, usually they're like, okay, we have 5 vacancies we have to fill. 1 for product owner, 1 for salesperson, etc. And basically the first step is to see, okay, what do you actually need for each of those roles? What's important? Like, does someone need to act very fast or very precise? Is someone needs to be like structured or very improvising? So that's what we help them to find out. And that's, of course, within a process of gathering input, scheduling a workshop, and setting things up.
Yeah, and I always tell my introduction, I help companies to have a different look at talent. So they have a vacancy text, but it's mostly a lot of gibberish and blah, blah. But actually they really don't know. Yeah, we wrote that down 10 years ago, but what does it actually mean yet on skill level or an activity level? And we also help them to come like in this new mindset of looking at the role or job. Yeah. And then when people are hired, that's the first talent decision. Then after 3 years, you want to know, is this person suitable to take the next step within my company or not? And then they also use this like not only for inflow, but also for continuation, growth, internal growth, mobility. And then also if a company has to have a look of the people they let go. So in outplacement, we also use.
Yeah. Really cool. I think you're really giving, what's the theme of this episode? Direction towards clients and help them to really set goals and ultimately, of course, achieve them with our services and products. But let's move on to specifying what the different planning styles look at that we're measuring with our Neurolympics games. So in the end, when you play our Neurolympics games, you can end up having a planning style, or your brain likes to prefer planning in one or the other ways, or you lean more towards the middle, because ultimately this is on a dimension. And our brains can have a more organized and a more improvised planning style, right? And if you're more organized, you really like to structure things ahead. You like to prioritize and break down tasks. So you're really good with task management, finishing things up in time, but not really good at this ad hoc work when surprising things come up and you have to maybe adjust changes to the schedule. But when you're more on the improvised side, you don't need as much structure. You don't plan out as much or organize in a structured way, which can lead to problems with like finishing a deadline or prioritizing well. However, this is very well suited in areas when you need to have to adjust to changes or ad hoc work. But if we look at it from a work perspective, can you give us some examples or touching upon the talent landscape that we also have at Brains First, how that's connected to different industries and jobs that we're working in, and why it's ultimately important to know which one over the other styles brains prefer?
Well, I can start from my own experience. I've been working now for 2 years, and before I studied. And when I studied and also in school, I was always really, really structured. Like I would know, okay, I have an exam, there are 15 papers to read, I have 5 weeks, so I read 3 papers per week, etc. You
Very predictable.
Yeah, you can plan everything ahead. You have the dates in front. You have basically the goal set, and you can put your structure and plan with it. And there are not a lot of dependencies, except if you have group work. That's a different thing, of course.
Always depending on other people.
But otherwise, you can rely on yourself. And working with clients now at Brains First, you notice that if you are dependent on your colleagues and clients and other deadlines, like only structuring things doesn't work. Like you need to stay flexible and be adaptable to, something changes in priorities, and then, your whole week plan goes away and everything looks different. So I definitely had to adjust to that. But, I think, working with clients, flexibility and adaptability, and that's also what we see, in other roles, is very important.
And so what is really important sometimes in your role, that you stay connected with your role, and you can be so improvising all the time, but if your role asks you to work protocolized, then those protocols are there, and if you cannot cope with being in these boundaries and those protocols, then you're not the fit for the job. So you need a little bit of both, but you also need to understand that you sometimes need to be counter-natural to be flexible colleague. Because if I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, you always say, no, come tomorrow. After 2 weeks, you didn't ask questions, things will go shite later on, you know? And we see that also in the talent landscape. We did a mapping of a lot of jobs, and then a research, can we see if there's differences on skill level between those jobs or not? And what you then see is there's a lot of jobs that have a different role title, but they're on skill level quite the same, not from background, not from interest, and not from studies, but a lot of jobs require to talk to people. work together, do analysis. And a lot of jobs also ask for project management, but also for example, admin. And these are all kind of skills or tasks that you see in a lot of jobs, but there are also a lot of jobs that's very different from each other. For example, a mechanic for airplanes is very structured. If he doesn't put the things at the same place all the time in the same protocol, the airplane is not allowed to take off. And for example, someone in the call center environment that gets every 3 minutes a new call. In these days, you also get chat. So you get end chats and you get calls and you have the other tasks. So you need to adapt all the time every 5 to 10 minutes. And if you're an airplane mechanic or a call center agent, that's so far away that it asks a lot of counter-natural behavior. And you see in this landscape that it really helps to map out jobs, but also people, because if we see a person in the landscape, you can say you're more protocolized or you're more structured or you're more adaptable. But also if you're more human-oriented or task-oriented. And this landscape gives a lot of direction, but also for clients in say like, oh, we didn't know that our role was like this, or it was so a generalistic role or so a specialist role. And that helps them also further to like, okay, some things it's a wish or other things are really a need. And if a person is not that structured, it can be a little bit less, but not a lot less, because then we're looking for actually a different profile.
Yeah. Well, this talent landscape really gives structure to the jobs.
It can also help companies to see something which otherwise like under the surface. Yeah.
No, it's really good. It's visualizing it. And again, I think we want to emphasize on this podcast that it's so important to match brains with jobs and tasks, because ultimately if you have a brain that prefers really organized planning and you work in this job or environment or industry that requires improvised planning, this is just gonna stress you out, make you tired. It's gonna need a lot of cognitive energy that could be used for doing the actual task, but then is wasted because it's just not the natural fit with your ability, with how your brain works, and then what is required in a certain job. And that's what we're ultimately helping our clients with, which I think is so crucial.
Indeed, but also on individual level, if you're, for example, a dentist and you're kind of, you're visiting your dentist, right? So you're coming there and every time he checks you differently, then you also get a little bit like stressed as a client from a dentist, like what is he or she actually doing? I mean, then you're getting to the point where you're like, hey, I know that last time you checked my teeth like this and now you're doing it differently. Last time it took 20 minutes, now it takes 3 minutes. Can you please tell me if I'm still okay with you as a dentist or should I move on? And it's also for how you are perceived as a professional sometimes, that you are doing what is needed. So the people have confidence in you and they can also look at you like, okay, at least now you do every half a year the same thing and I'm coming back and my teeth are still well, instead of every half year you do a different thing. Every time you start to drill somewhere else in my teeth and you say, I tried a new method. So that's also for how people perceive you, and that as well, very important that you act to what the jobs need on basic level. And then you can be a lot of variations, of course, in behavior and task as well, as long as the core is stable on that.
Yeah. And Kira, off topic, we spoke about how some jobs you actually cannot organize well your planning. For example, if it's more people related in general, right? Then it's sometimes just hard to plan.
Yeah. Well, I also do the customer support at Brains First, and then you get called and then you have to jump on a problem. So I really needed to learn to, be flexible and give up on too much planning.
Yeah. And how's it if we take the example of a manager? Is it like, what kind of planning style do you need there? Because maybe we can debunk a myth here that a manager in general has to be like this or that, because I think it really depends on what kind of manager you are, if we take this example, right?
Yeah, as you can see with different roles, for example, more technical roles in engineering that are really on the structured side and need to go according to protocols and plans, versus someone in sales with client contact. Actually, it's similar for managers. So I don't think the perfect manager exists and is always in the same. Maybe it's taken too far. I don't know all managers out there, but there's no one ideal manager. That's better put, I think. So yeah, if you're managing an engineering team, you need very, very different qualities and probably more structured thinking and organizing than if you are managing a sales team. That's way more dynamic.
Yeah.
And I think also, for example, in teams where there are sprints, these sprints are designed so that you don't have noise, basically, and you can focus and have the time to do what you have planned. And then kind of, are we on the right track? You check that in every 2 weeks, for example. But in a sales team, you get a call, there's this big chance, but you need to deliver by tomorrow a big proposal, for example. Then you drop everything. You have to prioritize, okay, what's important now? Okay, before tomorrow, we have this big chance to get a new order in. Yeah. And then you have to deal really differently with it, because also still you can be like in a sales team where in depth, there's very technical product or technical projects, but the dynamic is always out of sudden there's a client, out of sudden there's a chance, or out of sudden there is a problem, and then you have to act on it. And in the engineering team, it's much more, predicted where we want to go. So when the product goes offline, of course, or when a big industry goes offline or whatever, that's also a big thing, of course. But on like day-to-day routines, you see that the more you can predict, the less noise is there, the more focus on creating this product. And in sales, it's more like almost like the Wild West. Your calendar is the Wild West. Yeah, your calendar is like, okay, where are those bullets coming from? Do I have to take them, or do I have to shoot back, for example? Yeah. And that's, I think, also the people in that, they enjoy that much more. And the people that are in the engineering team or IT team, they enjoy much more also just, I can focus on one thing, I can work on this, I can leave my creativity with time. And in the sales team, it's more ad hoc, in the moment, where's the trail, more adrenaline, dopamine based.
But one thing to add, maybe, I think it's not only between jobs, it's also like the context you work in. For example, if you work at a startup, I think our developers need to be a lot more adaptable and flexible than in a big corporate. And in a big corporate, a sales job even might be quite structured because they can predict well, they know their processes, and you just know, okay, I get a new client, I go on. Then after 2 weeks, I get the next one. Like, everything is more settled in, I guess. So context is also very important.
It's ultimately like the requirements that a job brings with it, but then also the phase you're in or the stage you're in with the company, or what the context looks like. Right?
Yeah, this is very true. We lately had a client coming in that also said, we have developers, but the problem is we are scale up. We have so atypical developers. As long as they are at least adaptable, then they're already much more fitting in than the people that need this kind of calmness and structure, because it's chaos here. And then you also need to like chaos in your way of processing it.
And then that ultimately ties back to your work or your role, right? Because then that's what you take into account, and you try to build these tailored needs and tailored solutions for customers or for clients. So I think this is just so interesting, because I think we tend to think about a certain job, like manager or whatever it might be, engineer, and then we have this typical picture of what it needs in that job. But there's different needs for different types of that job, like if you're this or that manager, but then also in what context you're working in. So I think this is really good that we're touching upon this.
And for example, a crisis manager. If you're a structured crisis manager, there's never have been a reorganization that went according to plan. And there's always people that have emotions. There's always a new situation. People start to strike. There's all those things. If you're a crisis manager, of course, you have a plan and you mapped it out. But you need to be in this kind of flow all the time, open to change. And if you're not open to change, then the reorganization will be a lot of stress for yourself as well, because you need to be happy with the crisis cognitively, like open to enjoy it, basically. Even that personal situations are not then always enjoyable and that there's a lot of drama, take that out of the thing. If you're not flexible enough, then you will never. The goal of your role is then to reorganize, so you will never be able to achieve that goal as well.
Yeah.
And also the industry just came to my mind. But if you're a marketing company, marketing used to be maybe on big boards along the street, and then now you have social media, and then maybe tomorrow you have an update on Instagram and there's reels and there's a new thing, new version, then your work environment changes a lot. And I think maybe if you're an engineer or a doctor, the human body is still the human body like it used to be. And of course, there's new research and also new technologies, but it's a bit the changes are more long-term, I think, than in other areas.
Yeah, we really have to be aware of it.
Yeah.
It's super interesting. Maybe let's move a little bit away from the general work and job field more towards your personal lives, because we on this podcast love to also know a little bit about you and be personal. So in your personal life, do you set a lot of goals? Do you make a lot of plans, or do you more go with the flow?
I gave this question some thought up front.
How did you know about it? You
plan your answer.
There was of course this outline for this podcast and stuff, but I checked this morning and yesterday. Every morning, I think, because I have to travel from Rotterdam to Amsterdam, so I'm more than an hour on the road. I do a lot of emailing, of course, in the train, but I also have to think what people do I need to talk to today, and also, is it important or not? It's a little bit prioritizing, and then if I'm somewhere on Schiphol in between my start and arrival destination, then I have 50 minutes for a call. So then if it's really important, I can do a call. But if it's not important, they're in the drawer. And then if it's later the day, then you have to recheck basically also, do I meet my own expectations? So I basically do that every day when I wake up. That makes me really efficient because I'm not an early morning person. And by rethinking or thinking what I should do, then I can just follow the line. Yeah. But I think, I just started in the beginning about it, quitting smoking. I planned it much ahead because if I do it improvising right now, then tomorrow I forget that I did that. And then I forgot the feeling that I was on the right track with quitting, for example.
Yeah.
In the end, for me, goal setting is not a way to achieve things.
Yeah.
But it is a way for me to make my head clean. So I don't think too much about all those little things that pop into my mind. I have a goal, so I can think on Sunday afternoon about this goal, for example. And during work, I have a goal, and during work, I can think about my work goals. Yeah. But so I can keep things, separated.
So it's really to kind of reduce the noise.
Yes.
A bit.
A little, Because on the other hand, I would really have so many thoughts a day that if I'm not planned to think about my thoughts, they would go everywhere all the time. Okay, and therefore, I maybe also sleep not enough because I see in every minute of the day a lot of chances to do stuff. Yeah. And I have to plan it. But I also found in my personal life, if I just do plan one friend or family activity a day, then you see in your phone this day is covered.
Yeah.
So I cannot do two of those things in one day because in that way I keep space for spontaneity. Yeah. Otherwise, you have every day four things planned. I had friends in Amsterdam, Utrecht, Rotterdam. Yeah, you're on the way everywhere, and then in the end of the day, you lived. But did you enjoy it? So that's what I found out in personal level last couple of years, and it works quite well for me as well. Yeah.
That's super interesting. Yeah. How's it for you, Kira?
Well, I think you can structure and plan a lot of things, but life always comes in between in a way. I think there needs to be some flexibility and room for, spontaneity or to move things around. For me, it really works to have some bigger important things like this theory I just remembered with a glass, and you need to fit some big stones, some smaller stones, and some sand in it.
Yeah.
And if you put the sand first, and then the stones, it won't fit. But if you put the big stones first, and then add up the small things, they will start to fit in between. And I think that theory really works well for structuring daily life or life in general for me. So you have some important things for work. There are every day is 2 or 3 bigger things I know, those need to be done. But also in a week, I want to see these 3 friends this week. or in a year, there are like maybe 2 or 3 big events you plan ahead. And then, you leave some room for the sand and all the other things to fall into place.
I love this visual image, because also what came to my mind now is you really rather want to build on rocks anyways than on sand, because how stable is sand? If you want to build your house on sand, it's gonna
sink.
It's gonna sink, right, at some point.
Yeah.
So no, I really, really like this image you just brought up. And I think it also fits quite well to a theory we also like to use in neuroscience when we advise for effective goal planning, and that is called chunking. So it's like a psychological phenomenon where you take a bigger task or a bigger long-term goal, and you actually break it down in smaller chunks. And this helps to, on the way, have smaller achievable goals. But I think it also fits the picture that you just drew, because ultimately you have bigger chunks of prioritizing some things that are important and making time for that, and then fitting everything a little bit around it. But it ultimately helps to structure, I think. And how do you deal with if certain goals or plans do not work out?
So it's really funny, because every day when I wake up in the morning, I have a new page in the book, which is empty, and then basically it starts again. So also when I'm angry, for example, at people, or I'm super happy, or I had a blast of a party, and first
tomorrow it will be forgotten.
It will be not forgotten, but at least it's not emotional, like having impact on my day. Oh. So if I'm so angry, I need to grab it again from my memory and be angry again. That's annoying, so that almost never happens. But if I'm happy, I also need to reconsider basically, I was really having a nice time yesterday, and then I can re-enjoy it. It comes back. Yeah. But if I don't want it, it also stays away. So the chunking, for example, works really good for me as well, because then I see, I achieved things, and then I can continue a plan, for example. But if I forget that I was on this plan and this route and don't actively remember my chunks, it can also be that I forget a chunk or two.
Okay, so for me, this is really striking. But wait, can you wait? Okay, explain this. Like, so you wake up in the morning
every day.
Every day, luckily, every day you wake up in the morning. Every day you wake up, and then you have you were angry or you enjoyed something. But if you don't actively recall it, it's not in your mind, and you don't think about it, and it doesn't affect you.
Yes. So, for example,
my brain works very differently.
Yes. So I don't tend to actively include emotional feelings in my memory. So I don't I actively don't memorize. So remember what I was feeling, or I don't combine it in one big thought or feeling. It can be separately. So I could have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Next day, I'm very angry, but I don't remember the fun, or the other way around. Yeah. I was angry. I don't remember that I was angry. That's not a lot of times, but still. And then the next day, I just continue with life.
Maybe one thing you mean is that you don't ruminate. And I think ruminating is really destructive. If you do that, like if you don't achieve a goal or something goes wrong or not as planned, and you just keep thinking about it, you're actually taking your time and energy away to spend it on another goal, or to maybe try again or whatever. I think of course it helps to reflect on things and be like, okay, why did this go wrong? And was maybe something in my control that made it go wrong? Was it just, I don't know, an accident, or have I been unlucky, or have I actually done things wrong? And then you can just, I guess, focus on what can I do better next time, and move on. And be very accepting of things just are how they are. And
this is super crucial what you're saying, because this is indeed very, very true. Our brains can be really occupied in these loops of destructive thoughts or destructive emotions, and which we can call ruminating about something. But I think this is really also a neuroscience hack. If something goes wrong, if you fail in a sense, or something doesn't go as expected, it's important to maybe dedicate a certain amount of time that you actively think about it, but that you actively think about what went wrong, what could I maybe change, where did I have influence on it, where did it go out of control, and then I have to ultimately let it go, because we cannot influence everything. There's just some things out of control, and then to kind of make a plan on what is in your hand, what can you work on, and then let go of what you also cannot work on. Then maybe work on your emotion regulation, as you touched upon, how to actually deal with it, but then also leave it so that it doesn't occupy us as much. Because the more, indeed, it occupies us, this is a lot of mental energy that could go towards more important tasks or in something that brings you forward.
For example.
And I think I also want to throw in one last really cool thing about the brain. If we fail, or if we have a sense of we are failing, this is actually something that happens in the brain, which is called a negative prediction error. So our brains, they try to predict the future, and they do have ideas about a certain outcome. And this outcome would be rewarding. If we set a goal, for example, and then we want to achieve that, our brain would attach some value. Okay, this would be rewarding. If this reward doesn't come and we have an unexpected outcome, our brain gives us the signal, oh, something went wrong. And so failure ultimately isn't very pleasant for the brain. It's not like dopamine is spiking. However, our brain is doing something cool, because it always wants to anticipate towards the future. And so it updates its predictions. And so I think failure for the brain can be, in a way, it's unpleasant, but can be beneficial, because it just helps the brain to learn. And we naturally have this in us that we want to make things better the next time. And our brains, they actually remember these contextual cues of what went wrong. And then if we would encounter that situation again, they would make sure we're less likely to engage in that behavior or something again.
Yeah, so your brain is actually expecting a dopamine spike. It doesn't get that. And therefore you have a lot of pain instead of gain. And then you have to bounce back, basically.
Yeah, but then it would naturally not stick with this disappointment, but it wants to become active. Like, how can I do it better in the future? Yeah. This is, I think, just what fits to what the strive we should naturally have, to not stick with this rumination and in this phase of disappointment, but see how we can move forward.
Yeah, and I think that's very good so what I do every day, or not every day, but try to waking up. Waking up. And in the Netherlands, it's most of
first things first.
Yeah, in the Netherlands, most of the time it's raining. So I wake up and it rains, and then I'm still happy. But no, what I mean in this is like everything what your brain tries to predict most of the times goes differently. Same with humans. They are late. They're not showing up. They're saying things they didn't want to. Your clients were not having a plan yet, or they planned it so much that you're like, okay, we have to restructure the whole plan.
Yeah.
But also your personal life. I want to go to the gym. I had a flat tire. I can be very angry, but I can also take the bus now, for example. Yeah. Or I didn't went to the gym today, but I can go tomorrow. But if you start to look at those situations and take one step back, it's like happening every day, and you can always be very in it, but it's like natural that you will encounter so many like negative outcomes of things you would like to have better, that you can waste a lot of time and energy. You see it also now, people that are perfectionistic, for example, they plan a lot of things like perfectly, and then the colleagues, they're like, let's just do it a little bit like this or a little bit like that, and people start to cramp, like, oh, that was my plan, it's not going according to plan, how can I fix it? No, if you just let it loose, then you will see that in a different way, a different river, it will still come to the sea somehow.
I think this is really this is really good advice and really wise words. And I mean, if you're really, let's say, really high on this, you need planning, like this organized planning. I mean, what you can do ultimately as a tip is, or this letting go comes hard, to surround yourself with the right context for you, right? With other people that maybe do the same. So you just create this a bit more predictable environment as far as you can. But
and speaking out really that you're feeling it's going not like you want it is also important, because a lot of people, they take things for granted. And that's also, I think in this society, in this time, we're not really talking anymore to each other by listening. No, it's like I say something, you say something, we had a conversation, but actually, was that a conversation?
Ooh.
It was more like, I tried to say something, but the other person was not listening, so I feel not understand it, so I'm not intrigued to say it the next time again, and I take it for granted. but you feel
Wow,
stressed about
yeah.
it as well in the same time.
This is really good. A lot of good conversations depend on how well you're listening.
Yeah,
I think.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's in companies, but also with your family. And everybody knows
Yeah.
how sometimes with your parents, for example, you have this conversation. They try to tell you something and you are not listening. And then you're telling something and they're not listening. And all of a sudden you have stress without having a point of stress. So yeah, that's true as well.
Dropping some gold. Really good. Well, guys, I love our conversation. I think we're approaching the end of this episode. However, no Neurolympics podcast would end without a little cool down because we want to ease the brain cells into a resting state. So let's end. Cute, right? Yeah, I think
Very
it's
cute.
quite cute. Let's end smoothly with the last question that's a little bit towards your future selves. Any important future plans or goals coming up, or something that you want to achieve in the near future that you're working on?
For me, it's probably new to work life, still exploring which direction I want to go career-wise. And I think at Brains First, actually, I found a great place to explore because, yeah, it's a startup and you can see quite different roles. And I've already worked on many different projects. So I think continuing on that and seeing where it goes.
Nice. Good
It's
one.
a goal for me. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to enjoy life becoming 10 years. And,
10 only, and then
well, then
Don't want to wake up anymore.
then I want kids, and then
no, I'm not 31. I'm not very open on that debate. But when I was 21, I was like, okay, I want to find purpose, and I want to be not a millionaire, but I want to. I want to earn money
billionaire.
to do a lot of fun stuff. Now, at this time in my life, I do a lot of fun stuff. I have nice friends, I have nice family. Like I want to explore things in myself, but also in work. And I bought a new bike to maybe make it very small and tangible. I bought a new bike this summer, and I'm now going always to the train with my bike. And now winter time is approaching. So if I get through this winter, going every time by bike, even when it's shitty weather, I think I did a great job because it keeps you a little bit active.
Super nice. Well, love it, guys. Thank you so much for our insightful conversation. Thank you for taking us along with what you're doing at Brains First. And I think the very, very innovative approach that we have to seeing work and structuring it in a way that we look at talent differently, and then how we match talent to jobs and how we can help organizations. So I think this is super, super cool. And also thank you, of course, for taking us along your personal lives a little bit and showing yourself a little bit vulnerable here on this podcast. Loved it. And we hope you at home, of course, enjoyed this episode, that you can take something away that's helpful for you in your personal career, in your personal life, in your sporting career, whatever it might be. And we would love to see you more engaged on the Neurolympics podcast. So please make sure that you leave any insights, any comments, any questions that you might have to Ivar or Kira or myself that come up in the comment section. We would love to get back to you and engage with you. And of course, we would love to see you more frequently on the Neurolympics podcast as well. So please make sure to subscribe to any of our platforms. We're on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, you name it. Head over to www.brainsfirst.com/podcast. That's where you will find us and all the information you need. And also follow us on our socials, so on Instagram and TikTok. And we would love to see you there as well. And until then, well, have a good one, everyone. Stay happy, stay healthy, and see you next time on the Neurolympics podcast. Ciao, ciao.